Hi, my name is Lourdes, and welcome to this video series, Last 60 Best 60, which I started November 1st, and we're now into day 28, and I've been sharing every day a little motivation, inspiration, and just way of looking at our lives or exercises to work on our lives so that we finish the year strong, so that we really identify our values and the people and the experiences that are really important to us, and that we prioritize those experiences and people so that we really spend our time creating lives that we love and creating lives that have impact. And so one of my very favorite phrases is from Tony Robbins, although a lot of people use it, and I'm going to share it with you in case you haven't heard it. So it's life happens for us and not to us. And for me, that's such a great reminder that I'm in control of how I respond to everything that's going on in my life. About 20 years ago, I started to notice that some people would always be complaining. It would be like, how are you? And it's like, and I would just know to brace myself to listen on the phone or in person or, someone at work, like their life would always be about complaining. And that was just who they were. And I just found it very interesting. But what I wanted to share with you was that, one way to look at the things that come up for us that become complaints or we find ourselves complaining is to just shift it around, to make that mind shift that we are in control, and that phrase that life is happening for us and not to us really turns it from being a victim to what I'll say being a leader, a learner, and a legacy. So as a leader, when something happens, and I know that now just from working on Illumined magazine, that it's really an opportunity to take in information and what they say, and what a lot of people in business world say is pivot. Like if this isn't working, it's not so much that it's a failure, but it gives you an opportunity to change it up and to try another tactic. Because a lot of times when you're trying something new, you can't go off of, well, this worked for that company, so it's going to work for me. In this day and age, we're working with such advanced technologies and new ideas that just because something doesn't work out doesn't mean that it's wrong or failure. It just gives you information, and a leader would pivot and either take that learning and try a different approach, or see what worked not quite right and make it better. Or another way to pivot is to take some feedback and to amplify what's working. So be a leader, be a learner, and so actually that kind of comes easiest for me. So the response that I usually come up with when I come across something that feels either overwhelming or unmanageable or new is that I figure things out and I learn things, and I learn all about that. So I've done that, for so many things, including sort of some basic things around the house, and including cooking or reading organizational books or figuring out how to do a budget. All of these things, luckily, you can find on YouTube. I, 20 years ago, would just buy books and read or take classes. And then also like running Illumined and creating Illumined, like I had never run a magazine before, and my main work has been teaching yoga, and that was just using all of my talents and gifts. So I would just learn as much as I could from either other people who went into publishing or similar kinds of media platforms, or just the entrepreneurial journey in general. So I'm a learner, and that's how I shift from like, oh my God, like this is such a problem, to really seeing it as an opportunity to learn and figure it out. And then third, to really see this as an opportunity to be a legacy and to use your your misfortune, trauma, or tragedy as really part of the story that leads to your legacy. And so the best examples that I have for that are actually superheroes. So I was actually just asking my husband to clarify some of the stories, because I don't know all of the stories of the superheroes, but I do know that like the Incredible Hulk was exposed to gamma rays, and so his anger became actually like a key to his superpower, because he was able to really destruct the bad forces. Spider-Man, he was bit by a spider and then he got his superpowers. So to really use these tragedies or traumas or misfortunes as actually a way to unlock some wisdom, some superpower that only we have because of that. I don't really have a lot of tragedies in my life, thank God. I certainly have not had the perfect life though. And so what I've done is I've taken situations, like I'll say that, so when I was in college, I actually was just really struck with discontent, like discontent for what I thought would be my chosen career path. And that was hard for me in college, because I had, up to my senior years, taken classes for medical school, to apply to medical school, and then I got to be a senior, and I just didn't have the passion, and I had taken some classes in theology and realized that was my passion, and it was a real conundrum, because a lot of family story was invested in me becoming a doctor or following that path of my parents. And so to not follow that was not an easy decision to make, and it led to a lot of really sadness and having to work on a relationship with my parents that should be like your easiest and best relationship. But what I did was I followed my path and went to graduate school in theology, and I at some point really used that knowledge and growth as kind of circling back and healing that relationship with my parents. And so while that's kind of how I got to where I am as a yoga teacher, and using that spiritual base to interpret philosophy in the context of a very physical and spiritual practice, I find that as my way of turning into a legacy. I wasn't stuck or stopped by kind of like a bend in the road, that I really used it to catapult me into doing work that I love. So I encourage you to think about this phrase, life happens for you and not to you, because a lot of times we can get into that victim mentality and find ways to be a leader, a learner, and a legacy because of these things that happen to us. So you are living an illumined life. Stay with it, finish strong, and I'll see you down the road.